Ready?
Good morning, folks. Can any of you guess what I'm going to talk about today? That's right, the Hound of the Baskervilles. And here he is. Actually, I'm talking about Sherlock Holmes. Whenever I talk about writing, people are interested, how do you create a compelling narrative? And there are an infinite number of ways, but the first one that pops up is you create a character who's so fascinating that he outlives his author. And there's no better exemplar than Sherlock Holmes, who's probably the most widely known fictional character in history. 100 years after Arthur Conan Doyle's death, there are more Sherlock Holmes stories than ever. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has written 3 novels on Mycroft Holmes, Sherlock's older, smarter brother. I've been dipping into Sherlock lately because I've written a Sherlock Holmes meets Captain Nemo graphic novel that Richard Bonk is illustrating. This is the greatest work of Richard Bonk's career. Nobody knew that if I went into steampunk, his true genius would shine, but wait until you see the illustrations. Those of you who follow me on Twitter have seen some of them, and if any of you want to reach out to me on Twitter or Facebook and ask to see some of those illustrations, I would be happy to show them to you. What is it about Sherlock Holmes that excites the imagination? Why does he live on long after his author's death? I think that he represents a type that's interesting in and of itself, the human thinking machine. Many people have commented on the fact that Holmes' genius in solving crime came at a terrible cost, that of his own humanity. He's afraid to examine his own emotions. He has no relations with women, as far as we know, except for Irena Adler, who he always referred to as the woman. In preparation for writing this graphic novel, I reread some Holmes, and I watched as many Sherlock Holmes movies as I could. Do you know how many Sherlock Holmes movies there are? More than you can count. There are 3 movies alone based on Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper. Murder by Decree is one of them. It's not very good. The one starring John Neville is much better. It's the definitive Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper movie. I also watched all of the recent BBC Sherlock Holmes episodes starring Benedict Cumberbatch, in which they update Holmes to the 21st century. And I have to say that they're brilliant, at least the first 3 seasons. They're just brilliant. They do it very convincingly. And Cumberbatch's acting in that he zeroes in on the character perfectly. At one point he announces, "I'm a high-functioning sociopath," which is as good an explanation for his personality as any. We all have our favorite Holmes. My favorite Holmes is Jeremy Brett, who did a BBC series years ago. Jeremy Brett's an interesting case because as he proceeded to make the show, he identified more and more with Holmes until that's all he could think about. And at one point he thought he was Holmes, and he suffered a mental breakdown because of it. If you watch his shows, you'll see why. He is Holmes. It's just a brilliant performance. Basil Rathbone certainly figures in my top 5 Holmes. He was famous for resurrecting Holmes during the 40s in a series of black and white films, many of which took place in the 20th century. Basil Rathbone is a perfect Holmes. He looks the type, as does Jeremy Brett. Benedict Cumberbatch is nobody's idea of what Holmes would look like, but he inhabits the role so perfectly that you buy it. There are 3 Hounds of the Baskervilles that I know of, and I've seen all 3. There's the Jeremy Brett version, which is brainy and satisfying. There's the Basil Rathbone version, which is also very satisfying, although not as intellectual as the Jeremy Brett version. And finally, there's the Hammer horror version starring Peter Cushing, which I recommend. Cushing was a brilliant Holmes. he played Holmes a number of times. So did his good friend Christopher Lee, who plays Henry Baskerville in The Hound of the Baskervilles. The Christopher Lee Holmes is not good. I regret to tell you. I've seen him, and they just don't grab the zeitgeist. And Lee, a wonderful actor though he was never quite right for Holmes. Holmes will endure, and there will be more Holmes stories as we go on. My friend Paul Bishop, the novelist, who's a retired Los Angeles police detective, says that Elementary is his favorite Holmes. I've never seen that show, but I intend to. As you know, Elementary updated Holmes to the 21st century and turned Dr. Watson into a woman, played by Lucy Liu. There are undoubtedly more Holmes movies in the works. I only pray that they don't go woke. A woke Holmes wouldn't work. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with Sherlock Holmes, and I imagine there's nobody out there who's not unfamiliar with Sherlock Holmes, but if you are, there's a rich body of work to investigate, not just in film, but in the books themselves. And once you start reading the books, you'll be hooked. I just picked this up. It's a definitive biography and explanation of the whole literary phenomenon, explaining how Conan Doyle came upon the idea of the character and then tracing it all the way into the future to the Sherlock Holmes they're doing today, including Benedict Cumberbatch. Conan Doyle was inspired by his medical teacher in medical college, who demonstrated every day the importance of looking at tiny details and extrapolating from them. And that's where the idea for Sherlock Holmes came. We're glad he did it. Sherlock Holmes, as I said, is possibly the most popular fictional character of all time. And I imagine that future generations will resurrect this character and give us their versions. So keep your eyes out for Sherlock Holmes meets Captain Nemo. It's several months down the pike, but Richard Bonk is almost finished with the illustrations. And as I said, contact me on social media and I'll be happy to show you some of the art.
Very good. Interesting explanation. And you had a launch of a new comic book.
That's right. Florida Man vs. Hogzilla is live now on Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and Fund My Comic. The first Florida Man graphic novel did very well. This next one is much funnier. I'm very proud of it. And as you know, Florida Man is Gary Duba, a redneck living in a trailer down by the swamp. He's got a hair trigger temper. He's been in and out of trouble with the law his whole life. He likes to get high. He likes to get stoned. But he's got a heart of gold, and he'd give you the shirt off his back. Every Florida Man story follows the same wild ride, which is rags to riches, to rags to riches, to rags to riches. And the rags to riches scheme in the new Florida Man graphic novel will make you laugh out loud.
Very good. And what's the name of this latest one?
Florida Man versus Hogzilla.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Appreciate the likes and subscriptions, and we'll stay tuned for next week. Thank you.